and gentlemen, welcome to Woodburn and Emerging Communications webinar series on marketing to the Chinese consumer and protecting your brand and company in the process. If you're planning to market to the Chinese consumer soon, or you've already begun the process, then this is the series for you. Together with Emerging Communications, a full-service Anglo-Chinese digital marketing agency, we're going to provide to you as much information as we can to help you in your first phase of your China market entry, which is to discover and build your brand in the local market. This webinar series is going to highlight the importance of protecting your brand before you even set foot into the market, understanding who your target market is going to be, how to create a viable and long-standing structure for your business so you can smoothly and flexibly expand your operations, and last but not least, learn and understand about the Chinese digital marketing world. To begin with, let's start off with a bit of administration. You need to choose your audio option once you get online to the GoToWebinar system. Now, the use of a VPN may be required by people based in mainland China due to the fabulous and wonderful Great Firewall. I am also currently using a VPN and have to admit that I forgot to turn it on before starting this webinar session. So as you can imagine, there may be technical issues along the way. Please don't exit the webinar. I will return as soon as possible to complete the webinar session. Once you've launched into the session, you should have been prompted to either using your computer audio or a landline. The computer audio section basically means you're using your mic and speakers, or the phone call is using a landline, whether a mobile or an actual landline, to log in. This is usually what pops up. If you're trying to use your telephone, you'll have a dial-in number, an access code, and an audio PIN number. Please be aware that charges will be raised if you do use your telephone. In addition, if you have any questions or comments, please do not be shy. Add them into the questions section of the control panel. Dominica today is the moderator. She's going to be questioning me on the topic of today, which is saving your brand. We will try to get to about 4 or 5 questions if time permits. If not, if we don't get to your questions, either don't leave the webinar session, or if you do have to rush out, which is understandable, I will be reaching out to you to answer all the questions that have come in. So again, please don't be shy. Place your questions, place your comments. It's free of charge. We're offering you fantastic advice in these 4 webinar sessions that are on this week. So now let's test the system. If you're all listening to me, it'd be wonderful if you could click on the hand button in the control panel to let me know that the sound system is functioning. If you're not listening to me, then no, there are a lot of hands that are popping up. So it seems that you guys are all interested in listening in. If you could click once again on the hand button, that will allow me to know that the sound system is functioning. There seems to be no sound. Dominica, could you just type to me again if you can hear me? There we go, it's back. All right, well, let's begin with today's session. Again, the audio sound may not be 100%. This is an online webinar. It's not going to be like a live event, so please do bear with us if the sound goes in and out. Allow me to introduce who Woodburn is. Woodburn Accountants and Advisors is specialized in inbound investment to China and Hong Kong. We establish, manage, and administer companies in both jurisdictions to meet our clients' specific requirements, which include market entry, cross-border investment, tax optimization, and corporate restructuring. Our clients are all international companies focused on Asia inbound investments, obviously with a focus on China and on Hong Kong. And our clients are basically doing anything and everything from manufacturing in China, exporting from China, selling into China, and offering a variety of services locally within China. And they all range from startup organizations to small, medium-sized companies to publicly listed companies. Now, just a small disclaimer in regards to today's presentation. The presentation today is a general view for everyone. All right, saving your brand in China, it's a very, very top and very influential topic in China. And for every single company who does something different, the regulations may apply differently. So today's presentation is really on a general overview, all right? If you do have specific needs, please don't hesitate to reach out and contact me. So allow me to introduce who I am. I'm the speaker for today. My name is Christina Kohler-Coluccia. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn. You can all see from what I've written here, what I've been doing and the level of expertise that I have. But I think what's really interesting to highlight is after 15, 16 years of being in the market, what I've actually learned of doing business in the market. And this is something that I always want to try to educate people and companies on, because it's something that everyone should learn when they get into the Chinese market. And hopefully you will all learn it sooner than I did. The first thing I learned in the Chinese market is having a great deal of patience. Now, you may all laugh, but I'm really serious about how much I've learned to be patient in the market. So much so that I've even had to educate my father and brother, who are my partners within the firm, on how to be patient when dealing with Chinese government offices, going inside a taxi, dealing with anything from your personal life to your corporate life. The Chinese culture really plays off of the lack of patience on Westerners. And when it comes down to tricky negotiations, they'll definitely play off of that. You need to learn patience in order to take your time, understand the market, and never feel rushed with anything that you're doing. The second thing I've learned is having an eye on detail. And this has certainly helped me with the business that I am in, which is corporate services and dealing with incorporation documents, accounting documents, tax documents. You really need to have an eye on detail and read things not just once, but 3-4 times. And more importantly, you need to read things in your own language. Don't rely on just having Chinese versions. This is something, again, that is critical. Another aspect that I like to highlight about what I've also learned in the market is there is no smooth landing going into China. There's no soft landing. Everyone is going to experience obstacles, is going to experience problems. But I think the one and most important thing to realize is there's always a solution. And I think that's the beauty of China. There's always a solution. But as most Westerners do, when there is a problem that arises, we look to blame someone. And quite frankly, blaming is a negative trait. It causes a lot of time. There's a lot of emotion behind it. And quite frankly, from my perspective, when you're dealing with business in China, it's a waste of time trying to find that person to blame. Get over yourself. A problem has occurred. There's always going to be a solution. You know that there's always going to be a solution or a loophole, and you have to spend that energy on finding what that loophole is. So this is what I've learned in 16 years of doing business in China. That's really, really helped me in understanding the market and helping my own company becoming successful. Now, I just want to iterate here, the whole purpose of these webinar series and the whole purpose of the webinar from today is really to educate you, inform you, inspire you. All right. You might leave today's webinar session thinking, oh, I'm such an idiot for not having done this. Don't feel like that. Okay. Everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's made mistakes in China. All right. But take what you learned from today and use it within your business, and educate your team on how to get things done. This is really the whole point of these webinar sessions. Now, I do want to just briefly just say something. I'll let Dominica introduce herself, but I just want to say how Dominica and I came together and how we formulated this webinar series. I think it's amazing to have in China a tremendous amount of service providers that offer solutions to Westerners that are coming into the market, especially startups or small, medium-sized companies. And what I'm hoping to get out of this webinar series for all of you is the fact that you can see how a lot of these service providers work together to formulate solutions for their clients. Without Domenica's help, there's no way that I could help a company formulate their digital marketing strategy or their branding into the Chinese market. Just like Domenica would not have the opportunity to have someone on her side say, this is how you register your trademark. This is what you need to know about incorporating a company in case that's the way you want to go. You know, our services are value add for our clients, and tied together, they offer a solution to companies. And this is something that I do want to highlight to people, is how firms work together in the Chinese market to formulate these types of solutions, because there are thousands and different types of consulting firms out there. So Domenica, I'll let you introduce yourself and Emerging Communications.
Thank you very much, Christina. Hello, everybody. That was a really good intro, actually, because I think the one thing I've learned in the last 7 years in this market is patience. You think that you have kind of got it nailed in terms of one industry and one type of approach, but I can assure you that every brand we deal with, their go-to-market strategy in terms of marketing is completely different. And that kind of leads me into how Emerging Communications and the partnership with Christina's firm actually came together. We increasingly found that brands, it's all very good to marketing a brand and building demand and building brand awareness, but that's only half of the job. If you are a retailer or a manufacturer, you've got to be able to provide that product or service in China mainland. That involves logistics, that involves trademarks, that involves all the things that we're going to talk about this week. So marketing is only half of the solution. So at Emerging Communications, we work with brands and we effectively tailor the marketing that they're going to require in order to deliver their objectives. Now, that could be anything from a brand starting very early days and actually testing the market within the UK to see if there is a market there, right the way through to brands that are actually looking to have feet on the ground in China and to be able to market their brand and sell their product or services to Chinese consumers in China. Now, that extends to one of the points that Christina made, which is quite pertinent, which is every single brand on this call and every single brand that we both deal with is different. And there is a presumption, which we'll talk about a lot more tomorrow's session and Thursday, that you know your brand and what Chinese consumers want. And that's the first thing I would say you need to think about, which is don't presume anything in China. We will talk more about that tomorrow, but just as a sort of overview of how we kind of work together, our job is to drive demand. And our job is to drive effectively leads and sales via marketing channels, consumer insight, and we work brilliantly with Christina's firm because Christina's company are all about making sure that you've got the infrastructure right in China and your products and services can be delivered to your consumers. Just very broadly, as an agency, we're split into three. We have a consultancy division, which is the what if, why, but how, that we so often come across with brands that are very established in China or have never been into China, which could be anything from market research and getting to know your customers through consumer insights to putting together the right go-to-market strategy, content strategies, whatever it requires for you to know what it is you don't know in order to get it right. We have a division that delivers marketing in market, and we have a very, very large team here now in London of Chinese nationals with extensive digital marketing experience, whether that be delivering search marketing or whether that be delivering social media marketing, content strategy, localization, whatever is right for your business at that time. And we have increasingly a very large training division that provides in-house training and workshops and seminars and masterclasses and now, as of today, webinars, because the biggest, I wouldn't say issue, but I would say obstacle that our brands face, no matter how established they are, is lack of education in the market. And once you understand what it is you don't know, you will be successful. I'm going to leave over to Christina now because I don't want to use up too much time, and I will be asking questions at the end of this session.
Thanks, Domenica. I always say that knowledge is power in China. It truly is. The more you know, the more you can actually succeed in the market. So definitely that's one thing to keep in mind throughout the webinar series today. So today we're going to be talking about saving your brand in China. And you would think that everybody knows how to protect their brand in China and at what point they should be protecting their brand and when they should be doing it and how they should be doing it and what they should be protecting, etc. So just a brief intro. China is truly emerging as a global IP leader and enforcer. And some people may believe that, some people may not believe that, but the government is really going in that direction where they are trying to protect Western brands. You've got to imagine, from the Chinese perspective or the Chinese government's perspective, it's an image thing. They want to make sure that whoever is investing in their country is protected. As such, it is simply the responsibility of any business owner to register their IP in China in a timely fashion before any IP hijacker or squatter can. And I'll explain what those two types of people are later on. And this means that before you begin any of your internet searches, your content downloads, your social media networking, joining local or even foreign trade shows in China, local networking events, or even just on-the-ground investigations where you're meeting companies, swapping business cards, swapping WeChat accounts, or even just doing your due diligence, you've got to register your IP. Now, I can imagine that most people hearing that are probably thinking, what? You should have done that. If you haven't done that already, you should be doing it tomorrow, basically. That's the whole gist of this presentation. Because if you are on this webinar, it means that you are interested in China. You're probably already doing something in China. You need to register your IP. So let's go into the whys, what, and ifs of the whole saving your brand in China. I have quite a lengthy agenda. It's 8 points. We'll get it within the next 30 minutes. Don't worry. I won't take up too much of your time, but I will just go through the basics. I just want to mention one thing here. Today, I'm focusing on trademark. I'm not focusing on patents. I'm not focusing on copyrights or any other forms of protection that you might need to do for your brand. The reason why is because each subject can be its own webinar. I'm focusing on trademarks today. For those of you that came on that are interested in patents, copyrights, or any other forms of protection, take the gist of this, because basically it will imply that you need to do something ASAP if you are looking to go into the market. All right. And the detail that goes behind just one aspect, which is trademark, you should be thinking if there are patent applications that have to be done, etc. So let's start off with the basics. In China, what is considered a trademark? And basically a trademark is any visual sign. So in short, a logo design, the company name that you use to promote your company, the combination of the two. Do you have numbers? Do you have just letters? Did you have someone actually design a logo for you? Because that logo is considered as a trademark. All right. Now, I've just used Woodburn as an example. So Woodburn is made up of two components. One is what I call the logo, the design, which is the WB, which is the red circle, and also the name, Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. You then have the combination of the two. Now in China, you can register either the design, either the name, or the combination of the two, or all three if you so wish. And this will come actually down to how you decide to market your brand. Now for Woodburn, we've made the decision to market our brand with the combination, which means that on any type of marketing material, at any type of event, you will see the logo, the circle, together with the name Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. So we've done the combination of the two. We will never advertise with just the logo or just Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. So from our perspective, we've limited the quantity of applications, we focused on just one, and ultimately that's also limited our fees in terms of applications. All right. And it's not complicated. If you think about your trademark, right? And let's say you are selling 3 different lines of products into the Chinese market. There are 3 different brands for each of those lines. You're going to have to register 3 times for each of those brands within the Chinese market. All right. But again, you have to decide just logo, just name, combination, etc. Now, why is it important to register your trademark? And this is where I really get sometimes astounded. And it's nobody's fault. It's just there's just not enough simplified information out there for people to understand. So I've tried to simplify it here. If you're looking to trade in the Chinese market, okay, and I don't necessarily mean by having a physical trading company in China, whether you just want to trade in China, you want to sell into China from the UK or from the US or from Germany, or you want to buy from the Chinese market and export, you need to register your trademark. Perfect case study. I had a client about 10, 15 years ago who was only sourcing in the Chinese market, had no entity in China whatsoever. What happened? A IP hijacker, actually one of his suppliers, had a falling out, registered the trademark, and on the next shipment from a different supplier, the goods got stuck at customs because the boxes and the products had the logo on it. All right. So this has to be something made very clear. Whether you are just sourcing in China, whether you are just selling into China, whether you are only manufacturing in China, whether you're providing services into the Chinese market, you need to register your trademark. Okay. The service aspect is something that a lot of people get shocked about because they think that trademarks should only be registered for products. It's not true. Trademarks should be registered for any product or service that is being delivered into the Chinese market or being sourced into the Chinese market. All right. This is something I cannot emphasize more. If you think that you're just a service company and you don't need to register your trademark, you are absolutely wrong. If you've gone the route of establishing a China representative office, which basically means you're a liaison office in China that from your perspective does nothing, which is the perspective of many Western firms, that's also a wrong perspective to have. Even if you have a China rep office, that office is doing certain functions. Business cards are being distributed. You will have some form of documentations, whether it's letterheads, whatever else, with the logo on it. Make sure that that is absolutely protected in the Chinese market. I have clients who don't even have establishments in China. They do everything from overseas. So for example, they'll have temporary liaison offices or temporary marketing offices where they will have maybe just one person on a freelance agreement, which again is not completely legal, but that's for a whole nother webinar session, sitting in China. Okay, just because this person is on a freelance agreement and is working part-time, this person is still going out in the Chinese market, distributing your name cards, your marketing material, whatever else that you might have, and you need to protect it. Okay. Again, whether it's for overseas companies with no subsidiary in China, for a company that's about to market into China, or for example, let's say you are a UK firm, German firm, Australian firm sitting in your home office and you are attending a trade show in Latin America. I guarantee you at that trade show, there's going to be booths of Chinese contacts, suppliers or whomever. If you start talking with them and exchanging name cards, you are at risk of not protecting your trademark. Okay? Even if you do not have the intention today to go into China, but you do have the intention next year to go into China, register your trademark today. All right? And it's not complicated. I think this is where there's so much misconception, and I'll explain to you why it's not complicated. It's actually so easy to do. Now, what I highly recommend companies to do as a first step, as an absolute first step, is to search the trademark database in China before filing any form of registration. Why do I recommend doing this? Well, number one, you will understand what marks are in existence, what trademarks are in existence that seem similar to yours. And number two, you will probably discover that your trademark is already registered. And this is where shocks suddenly come along and shake everyone's core, because either your distributor, your supplier, a consumer who's seen your brand on Tmall will have already actually registered it. And this is really where, dilemmas occur. I think the biggest mistake that I've seen with most firms, especially those that are looking to sell into the Chinese market, is the fact that they rely so heavily on that one distributor to sell their products throughout the Chinese market, and without realizing it and without your permission, that distributor has registered your trademark. And that's truly where that distributor has then cornered you and won't let you go until you pay a high sum to actually release it. And they've basically locked you into that agreement. So be aware, understand, and do this trademark search first to see whether you're safe or not safe, and make then a decision from there on. Now, why is it so easy for people to take your trademarks in China? Well, basically, it's because the trademark law in China is all about the first to file system. All right. Now, the disadvantage of the first to file system is that the law in China allows anyone to register a trademark, irrespective of whether it's been owned by another party or is in use in another jurisdiction. Basically, the Chinese government is saying China is separate from the rest of the world. If it's already been filed, then, if it's been filed somewhere else, we don't care. If someone else is using it outside of China, we don't care. If someone wants to register it in China and use it, then anyone can lay claim to it. And which basically means that anybody can own your brand, locking you out of China and making you make very difficult decisions about whether you should rebrand, whether you should fight it and pay a sum of money. It's a heavy subject for companies that have not done it properly. Now, on the other side of the coin is obviously the advantage in China is that it is a first to file system. So if you've never done business in China, you've never branded there, you've never branded to a Chinese person before, then you can feel assured that if you register tomorrow, you are fully protected. A trademark is valid for up to 10 years, and there is a renewal process which has to occur 6 months prior to expiration, but it should be noted that an application can take between 12 and 18 months in China, which is not a short period of time. And it doesn't limit you from starting to market your services or your goods, and I'll explain why a little bit later on. Now, when you're registering your trademark, there are a lot of considerations that you need to make. The first is searching that your trademark is available. You want to know, can I actually register it? But what you also want to know is what other trademarks exist in the Chinese market in the classes or subclasses that you want to register in that are similar. All right? There could be people that have taken your mark, tweaked it a tiny bit, and might be selling it on the market accordingly, and might be, branding it on the market accordingly. Searching your trademark gives you knowledge to understand what further steps you should be taking. Okay, and as Dominica highlighted earlier, knowledge is power. It's something you can use to leverage everything and make proper decisions moving forward. All right. If your trademark is readily available, then you need to understand, what you're going to actually register. Are you going to register the logo, the brand name, the motto, words, designs, numerals, letters of the alphabet, color combinations? You need to understand what you're actually going to register. What is important for your brand? And this is where you should then be talking to an expert. All right. What do the Chinese consider important in terms of brands? Right? Is it the logo? Is it the brand name? Is it a combination of everything? Okay. You need to get expert advice on that aspect. You should definitely avoid using cities, countries, and Chinese presidents' names. They actually will be rejected upon immediate application. So if you would use British, for example, or German, that will all be rejected automatically. The next aspect that you need to consider is who is going to own that trademark. Okay, you as an individual, you can own it. That's not a problem. If you're a corporate structure, will it be your parent company? Are you going to set up a holding company that can then get licensing fees out of it? There's a lot of things to consider in terms of who's actually going to own that trademark. All right, it's not as simple as it's going to be me as an individual. It's going to be the parent company. We should have a holding company in order to be able to optimize our tax situations globally, etc., etc., etc. These all have to be taken into consideration. The worst thing to do is to jump the gun and register your trademark under the wrong ownership and have to change that later on and explain why you're changing it. The minute you start putting a holding company from specific jurisdictions, the Chinese are not idiots. They're going to understand you're doing that for tax optimization purposes. So you've got to be smart about these things. The last point that really has to come into consideration is understanding under which classes and subclasses of goods you need to register under. So if people don't know about this, let me briefly provide you an understanding. Every single jurisdiction around the world has a class list for trademark registrations, and they're pretty much all very similar, although the subclass wordings will probably be different. You have classes for services rendered, for products, for goods, for marketing, for absolutely any type of category. There are over 45 classes and hundreds of subclasses, okay? You really have to make that investigation. Understand in how many classes should you register in and what should those subclasses be. You should be as extremely specific as possible. I would not be broad because that would just increase the price of your trademark registration application. You should try to be as specific as possible. But what you need to do, and again, a lot of people don't do this, is you've got to think long term when you're investigating all of these considerations, okay? Think long term about what you want to register. Think long term about how you're going to structure your licensing fees for trademark use. Think long term about adding goods in, right? Adding services in. This is not something that you should think on a short-term time scale. Because ultimately, if you have to make changes, it's going to cost you money. And in China, everything is bureaucratic, so it will cost you heartache as well. So let me get into some definitions, which I think are extremely important. And maybe I've made this a little bit dramatic, but I hope I've made it dramatic, and I hope that it will scare you a little bit to understand about trademark hijackers and IP squatters. IP squatters, probably everyone's heard about. But you also have trademark hijackers. And basically, a trademark hijacker is a local Chinese business or individual that registers a trademark in China, which is owned in another jurisdiction by an unrelated company. Okay? Now, the registrant then basically uses the success of the brand elsewhere and can demand licensing fees or even sue for infringement when that company overseas starts bringing in the products or services into the Chinese market, okay? So basically, it's a trademark hijacker is somebody who's foreseen the future, knows that this brand is obviously going to be coming into the market at some point, registers it, and then once the brand becomes successful and decides to go into China, can demand licensing fees or even sue. Now, what's the problem with this? The problem with trademark hijacking is that this local business can also ultimately sell goods or provide services that are similar or identical to that overseas company. And if they do that in a poor way or poor quality, then the image of the brand is basically ruined in the Chinese market. Okay? Again, this is why, even if you've never thought of going into China, but you probably think you'll be getting there in 5 years' time, you should be registering your trademark today, all right, just to protect yourself from these things in the future. IP squatters, this is a serious problem for late registrants, and basically occurs when foreign trademarks that are perceived to hold future value are registered in China. Nothing is done with it. So no products or goods or services are sold under it. But the minute that the overseas registrant enters the Chinese market, comes the licensing fees, the claims for infringement, etc. And they will probably say, do you want to buy the trademark off of us? All right. Now, depending on who it is, they could ask a fee of 10,000 RMB, or they could ask a fee of 1 million RMB. Or if your brand is so successful overseas, they could ask for double-digit, triple-digit millions of RMB in order to sell it. Okay, so you've got to keep this in mind. Now, a comment that I get quite often is, what is the Chinese government doing against these hijackers? What are they doing against these squatters? Everyone knows that these people or these companies exist. So what's the Chinese government actually doing about it? Quite frankly, not much. I'm not going to lie. It's very difficult to know who is a squatter or who is a hijacker, particularly if your brand isn't famous in the Chinese market. So it is difficult to find out. However, at the end of 2017, the China Trademark Office, the CTMO, they basically said that they're going to develop an online system to report cases of bad faith. So basically squatters or hijackers that are registering trademarks in bad faith. And this database, because generally speaking, these squatters and hijackers don't just register one trademark. They'll register multiple trademarks. And most of the time, quite frankly, you'll find that logistics, the people working in logistics offices, the ones that actually do the trade of the goods and see the brand names on the cartons or on the products are the squatters or the hijackers. And basically they want to keep a database that if someone is found out to have registered in bad faith, that most likely if they've registered another trademark and the claim has only come at a later date, that it will help the system. Nobody really knows if this will whether this database will come into fruition or not. I believe it has started already, but it's too early right now to know if it will be a success or not. So let's talk about why it's important for new market entrants to register their trademarks. Basically, because if you don't register your trademark, it is illegal for you to sell any goods or services bearing that trademark in China. It is illegal for you to manufacture or source goods from China bearing that trademark. It is illegal for you to provide a service locally in China bearing that trademark. It's illegal for you to actually market the brand in China with that trademark. It's also likely that any goods you do manufacture in China will be seized by Chinese customs upon export as counterfeit goods. Or in the case of this client that I had, get stopped at customs, whereby any supplier that they had from that point on that was exporting, the goods were not getting released by Chinese customs. So you can kind of gather why it's so important for you to register your trademark and do the research. Find out if it's already been registered, because the minute you know if it's been registered, you can take legal action. You can do something about it. But if you don't know, you're going into China completely blind, and you've no idea if your brand has been protected or not been protected. And the minimal research you can do is just search, has something been registered or not? So what should be your trademark strategy? Again, this might sound so simplified, but it's a matter of physically doing it. Your first step should be to conduct a search as to whether your trademark has been already registered or not, and under which classes, subclasses. If it hasn't, file tomorrow. It's easy. It's quick in terms of the filing. It's inexpensive when you think about the long-term benefits it's going to sustain you. Um, if you found that somebody is in the process of filing your trademark or it's already been registered, right, then choose an IP lawyer in China to represent you on what the next steps are. You can't start marketing and branding your product in China if your trademark's already been registered or your brand's already been registered. You can't, it's illegal. So get an IP lawyer, find out what options you have. And as I reiterated from the beginning, there are always solutions in this market. It might take time, it might take patience, but you can get your brand back. Okay, it's not a lost cause. And I don't want people to think that it's a lost cause. You can fight it. Of course, nobody wants to fight it, but if you hadn't registered it sooner, this is the outcome. Now, this is how easy it is to process your trademark. Actually, you only need 4 documents. You need a power of attorney to allow your lawyer or corporate service provider to register the trademark on your behalf. You need to have done a trademark search or registration form highlighting which classes and subclasses you want to register in. You need to have a soft copy of the trademark in JPEG format, how many of them there are. And you need a copy of the identity proof of the applicant. So if it's an individual, a passport copy. If it's a company, the business license. It is so easy. I cannot emphasize how easy this is. Okay, that's all you need. Then a priority document, when priority is claimed, is basically when you have that feeling that somebody is going to register your trademark. You just have a sense of it. You might want to file a priority document. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get the filing done in less than 12 or 18 months. It just means that it should be considered as a priority application, an express application. What steps are taken? You file your trademark application at the China Trademark Office. The China Trademark Office will conduct a search of the records, find out if anybody has registered a similar or same trademark. If you've done your research, then you'll be aware of this. They will also see if the trademark satisfies the trademark law, making sure that all the criteria, there's no city name, there's no country name, etc. And if the requirements for the registration are not met, the examiner will object to the mark. But if he has accepted it, then the trademark has been registered. It will be published in the Trademark Gazette for 3 months. And if there's no objection by a third party, the actual certificate will be issued by the CTMO. And like I said, all these 4 steps take between 12 and 18 months. Now, if you've done your research and you are pretty certain, because your advisor has kind of told you this, that your trademark will be, 80%, because there's never 100%, will be about 70 to 80% approved, then for 12 to 18 months, 12 to 18 months, you've got nothing to worry about, and you can start marketing. If, however, you have found similar marks, you're not 100% sure about what's going to happen, you don't know if someone has filed sooner than you, then you should wait before you start marketing and branding until your trademark has actually been approved. Now, I'll give you an example of a story, a relatively sad one, actually. There was a company in China providing services. They had not registered their trademark in China ever. That biggest mistake. Just never got around to doing it. It was never a priority. It was at their bottom of their list. They then finally said, okay, let's do it. We're going to register our trademark. They didn't do a trademark search, but they filed the trademark application. 6 months later, they find out that their trademark had been registered 15 days prior from an IP squatter. An individual somewhere in Zhejiang province, they were based in Shanghai, that had registered it. And this person owned the trademark. And because it was a new application, they had no proof of bad faith, right? Now, if a person registers a trademark and they've not used that mark in a period of 3 years, then you can really file to denounce this person as having registered within bad faith. but that's a 3-year wait. All right. If you do have proof that they've registered in bad faith, then of course you can do something immediately. All right. But be smart about this. Make sure you register it as soon as possible. And just remember, I hope that out of this presentation, it just shows you how easy it is to actually physically register it. Okay, it's not complicated at all. So I do want to thank everyone for listening in to me. And if you do want a free consultation, don't hesitate to reach out to me in terms of how you can protect your brand or your trademark. Dominica, should we leave it up to questions?
Yes, please. That was fantastic. Thank you very much for that. We've had lots and lots of questions come through. So what I've done is I've chosen the most asked questions. But as Christina said, all of the questions after this session have all been put into the panel. And we will be, Christina today, myself tomorrow, we will be answering all of those questions once the webinar has finished. So Christina, probably the most asked about question from everybody on this webinar has been, why bother? This is something we're frequently asked, actually, which is, we believe, Domenica, that if we fight this, we're trying to market into China, we know that somebody else has got our trademark, surely, or even if we do get one, it's not going to be protected anyway. What would you say to that?
Well, I'll reference it to another example that I get quite a lot is, why bother should we sign contracts in China? In any case, they can't be enforced. The perception everywhere for anything that you do in China is just simply it can't be enforced, so why should we do it? It's really not true. The government is, and trust me, I've seen it over 16 years, okay? The government is really trying to have a fair playing field for both Western invested firms and local Chinese firms, okay? So, I just want to mention and highlight here, it doesn't mean that local Chinese firms, their brands are not being hijacked and squatted either, okay? It's just, I'm targeting the Westerners on today's presentation, but it needs to be taken into consideration that this can actually be done on the Chinese side as well as on the Western side. Now, if something does happen, there are qualified IP lawyers on the ground in China who can defend you, who can give you the right advice about what the next steps are taken. But wouldn't it be more simple, easy, more efficient, inexpensive to just register it up front? Like I said, you need 4 documents and it takes 4 simple steps to register. So why not just do it? That should be the question you should ask. Why not just do it?
Absolutely. I mean, the amount of brands that come to us that don't have a trademark is staggering, and they've already got people on the ground in China. They're already paying either salespeople on the ground, or they've got distributors, and they've got so much power. They're distributors, they don't realise. I think it's just really interesting that it just seems to be the fear factors putting people off, and actually it's the worst possible route you could take.
Absolutely.
And on that note, another couple of questions. There's a question that's been asked 4 times, which is, shouldn't I just register it myself? As in-house legal department, registering the trademark in China, is that enough? Do we need to instruct a Chinese specialist IP lawyer? Why can't we just use our in-house departments that normally do our trademark law for us in other markets such as the US and Europe? What would you say to that?
So I think ultimately, if you have your own in-house legal team and they're familiar with the Chinese market, absolutely. Filings, though, have to be done locally. So you will need somebody to go to the bureau and submit it on your behalf. If you want, as an individual, want to go register your trademark, you can absolutely do that. It could just be that the person you have behind the counter requests to see a lawyer or to see a registered agent. But absolutely, I mean, you can do all these filings by yourself. You can fill out these forms. In that case, you also don't even need the power of attorney, which actually means you only need 3 documents to submit. I think the thing is, though, is you do want someone with a level of expertise to guide you in terms of what classes you should go under, what subclasses you should go under. It's not so much about what documents do you need or how do you submit them. It's more the four considerations that I highlighted. You might need someone to help you with the research because online it doesn't always work and it's not accurate. Two, what should you register? I think Dominica would be an expert on what should you register, a logo, a brand name, what combination, who should own it, and ultimately what classes and subclasses should you be in. So you might need help and advisory on that aspect.
Yeah, we get an awful lot of people that just do it themselves, but they don't have any Chinese expertise or even Chinese language in-house, and they find that then when they do try and file, there is a problem. And it just seems to me so much simpler to do it properly.
Right.
And on that note, the other questions that we've been asked a lot today is about speed. You mentioned at the beginning about patience, which I think China is probably, out of all the markets in the world, the one you have to be the most patient with. And we have a lot of brands that come to us saying, Domenica, I want this done by the end of the month, or I want this done within this quarter. I have to report back to the board. So what would you say to brands that are saying, I just want to speed up the process, I have people I have to appease on the board? What would you say to them?
You can't. It's really as simple as that. Everyone has to be compliant. So bribing officers is no longer a possibility, maybe like it was 5-6 years ago. The speed is the speed. It's 12 to 18 months. But like I said earlier, if you've done your research and you have a ratio of confidence in terms of the application, it doesn't mean you can't start marketing your brand or feeling like your brand is protected. Of course, you won't feel 100% secure and you won't be able to take a deep breath until you know that certificate is issued, but it doesn't prevent you from starting. But do your research first so you can make that ratio in your mind, what percentage do I have in terms of a guarantee of getting the application registered or not?
So would you suggest that, say, a brand that is looking to quite aggressively target China, and we've got one at the moment, would you suggest that once they've filed their trademark, and they've obviously taken your advice on that, that they can then start the process of marketing in China, or wait until their trademark comes through, which could be a year, 18 months, and a lot of brands aren't going to wait that long?
No, I would actually, again, it depends on the research side of things, right? What's been the outcome of the research? Most of the time you will probably find that in the classes and subclasses you've chosen, there's no mark that's similar or even the same. So in that case, start straight away, right? You have no risk because, again, it's the first to file. The minute you file, you're protected. It's the date of filing which protects you. So I would just go ahead and start straight away.
Okay, that's really, really useful. Thank you. The other question we've been asked is about Madrid Protocol.
Yes.
Is this an option for China?
Yeah, so I didn't touch on the Madrid Protocol because, again, I feel like that's a whole other subject in itself. But let me explain briefly what the Madrid Protocol is. The Madrid Protocol is where a bunch of countries, I think about 40 of them, have come together to say, with one filing, you can be registered in as many countries as you like. And you can choose all 40, you can choose 10 of the 40, etc. China is part of the Madrid Protocol. So in theory, if you register the US, the UK, China, a couple of countries in Southeast Asia, you can do that under one application. Now, my feeling about the Madrid Protocol is the following. If you actually, in the end, want to go to court or you want to file a breach of something, it's much easier to do that if you've done a local application, local individual application versus doing it under the Madrid Protocol. So that would be my philosophy. Another aspect is not every single country is within the Madrid Protocol. So for example, Hong Kong isn't. And if you then want to do business Hong Kong plus China, well, anyway, you should need to do a local filing in Hong Kong. Okay. So, again, you should create this trademark strategy. What do you want to do in the long term? How many jurisdictions do you want to go into? I just want to highlight one case study that I really do want to mention from a client and company that I met recently. If you are manufacturing in China and you are looking to sell those goods anywhere else in the world, you need to register your trademarks in those countries as well globally. I know a lot of startups that are starting up their businesses in China and then want to expand outside of China. Don't forget about these other countries that you want to expand into. You need to register your trademark as well.
That's fantastic. That's basically, we have a lot more questions than that, Christina. So I suggest that after the webinar, as we said at the very beginning, all of those questions are going to be answered. Maybe not all in one day, there are quite a few of them, but certainly expect a response from Christina today on those questions.
Excellent.
And tomorrow we're back.
Yes.
We're talking about marketing tomorrow. With regards to bonding with consumers in China, so understanding about customer segments and how to understand what your customers actually want versus presuming what they want and what they need, and how to get the best strategy in place.
Exactly.
So, Christina,
I just want to highlight one thing, and I'll be highlighting at the end of each webinar session. Is Dominica and I are going to be meeting up in London at the end of October, on Tuesday the 30th of October. We are looking to organize a roundtable event. So anybody from the UK that's participated today who wants to have a live face-to-face meeting with both Dominica and I to troubleshoot basically the problems that you might be having or the successes that you might be having, then please contact Jenny from Emerging Communications to register for the roundtable event. It's open only to those that are participating in this webinar series. And unfortunately for those outside of the UK, I'm not traveling there yet, neither is Dominica, so the UK is our first stop for this session.
Yes, these roundtables are very, very successful. We've had some really good results with some clients in the past, sat around a table, effectively brainstorming different issues, and we are very keen to meet some of you in a couple of weeks' time.
Exactly. And last but not least, the recording of this webinar session will be posted on Woodburn's YouTube channel. And both Dominica and I will be sharing the recordings via our social media platforms. So either follow Dominica, follow Emerging Communications, follow Woodburn, or follow myself. And you'll get up to date on a lot of free resources and information about going into China, marketing in China, branding in China, etc.
Fantastic. Yes, I'll be sharing this afternoon. And I will be back online tomorrow at 9:30.
Perfect. Thank you all for coming and joining and listening in today. Dominica, thanks a lot for moderating today. Greatly appreciate it. And we'll catch up with all of you again tomorrow. Thank you.
Fantastic.
And goodbye.
Thank you, Christina. Bye-bye.